here at Folsom Field. Colorado conducted its lone open practice this morning. It was hot out here, but it was great to actually see some football with our own eyes, and then media day. First off, Brian, what were kind of your general takeaways? I know you don't want to overanalyze one practice in shells too much, but again, it's our only opportunity to see these guys this preseason.
Yeah, but because of that, try not to worry too much about like whether a quarterback is sharp or things like that, and because it is just one day. But I mean, my biggest takeaway, a couple of things was the defensive linemen were working out right in front of us.
Yeah,
there's some huge guys there. Those freshmen are big guys, and we'll see if they can play. But body-wise, those look like guys that can help them. And they want to use 8 or 9 guys. They've only got 9 guys on scholarship, so those guys got to be ready to play. On the flip side, the cornerbacks are very skinny, and not a lot of weight there. But there's some talent there. So we'll see. But those are kind of the two biggest things. Is those defensive linemen right in front of us, like those are big dudes.
Those cornerbacks might be skinny, but Delrick Abrams Jr. has continued to get better here. And Mekhi Blackman, every time we get a chance to watch these guys, he's like a magnet to the football. A couple interceptions today, had a couple in the spring game. Again, you don't want to overanalyze it too much, but as skinny as he is, he just seems to make plays every time we get a chance to see him.
He does. I saw him with another interception today, and I chatted with Tyson Summers today, and he mentioned Mekhi. He said, the guy from practice 1 to practice 15 in spring made the biggest jump by far was Mekhi Blackman, and said he just continues to do that here this fall camp. And he mentioned Chris Miller as well as a guy. They've only had him 3 days because he missed spring, but he said that guy's got maybe as much ability as anybody on our football team. And so I think talent-wise, they've got 3 pretty good corners that can play, but whether they stay healthy or not, we'll see.
And one thing we wondered coming into preseason was beyond Davion Taylor, who could play that star role. And we saw Mark Perry actually get some run with the first team defense in that role. I think that would suit him pretty well, especially if you're on the back end, you're having to make a lot of calls.
Right.
Up in that area, you have responsibilities, but it might be a little easier for a true freshman. And he's almost 200 pounds. And again, I think the way they're going to use that star is going to be a little different than the buff backer, because you don't necessarily need to be, 220 pounds.
Right. Yeah, in fact, chatting with Davion Taylor, he mentioned the biggest adjustment for him is how much coverage there is and how much he's lining up against a slot receiver, where he didn't have to do that as much last year. So, a guy like Mark Perry can help in that regard. He's obviously talented. He's played some corner, and he's playing that star and safety. But certainly, if you got Davion and Mark Perry that can play that star, I think you're okay at that position.
With Mike McIntyre, it was almost like pulling teeth to get him to talk about freshmen, especially early on in camp.
Yeah.
But Mel Tucker mentioned Jaron Mangum after practice on Friday, and today we saw him get some run with the first team offense. Had that one run where he dove into the end zone, and he's got a mentality that you really like to see there. And I have a hard time seeing a situation where he's not getting a lot of carries this fall.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I hear a lot about Alex Fontenot and him as kind of maybe those lead two, but man, every time, we've only had a couple chances to see Jaron, but the things you hear and then you watch, it's like, okay, this kid's might be pretty good. Probably not 300 carries like a Philip Lindsay, but that kid's going to run the football a lot.
And even Deion Smith had a long run today. So they're trying to build that stable of backs. I think they've got 3 guys right there right now. Sticking with offense, Purcell again at center, Lynott at right guard. Mel Tucker said in his press conference at Media Day that they're not settled there. I thought Lynott would be the center coming into preseason camp, but it's actually been the other way around. Yeah,
I was a little bit surprised by that. I expected both guys would play a lot at center, but it sounds like right now it's Purcell's, at least that's where he's slotted right now. I don't know, we'll see what they look like in week 2, but I'm not surprised they're both working out, that they would both work out there, but I am surprised that it's been mostly Purcell.
And Kerry Cush in there at left guard today with the first team offense. Anything else you noticed offensively today?
I'm trying to think. LaVisca looks pretty fantastic. Steven didn't have the greatest day, but the quarterbacks I don't think were spectacular. But again, you watch one practice, and I don't read too much into that. I just thought, the offensive line, I thought, Arlington Hampride looks good. Will Sherman looks pretty good at tackles. I think those guys look good. And receiver-wise, Tony Brown, continues to play well. And just every time you see him, he's just catching passes. And you always hear Mr. Consistency with him. And he kind of shines a little bit here and there. And you kind of like him as that number 3 receiver.
Yeah, and punt returning, we saw Dimitri Stanley, like we did in the spring, fielding punts. LaVisca Chenault fielding punts. And Tony Brown fielding punts. I tweeted that out, and people are kind of freaking out about Laviska being back there. Do you share that concern?
Yeah, a little bit. In that, I think people are freaking out because of. It's widely viewed that his injuries last year were from overuse. It's like, so you're going to add that to his plate. But again, when you look at that between Ronnie Blackman, we were talking about that while watching Laviska. It's like, I'd probably rather have Laviska back there than like a Ronnie Blackman was last year, because it was such an adventure. Laviska at least is probably going to catch the ball, and whether he wants to hit the home run or not, we'll see. I mean, Ronnie Blackman. You made the point that that was his only real chance to touch the football, and so he wanted to hit a home run every time, and that would cause some problems. Whereas Laviska might be a little more cautious.
One other guy I wanted to mention, Darian Jones, had a really nice catch on 7-on-7s, double coverage. We can't write him off. I know it was a learning curve for him coming from the JUCO ranks, but you look at him in street clothes or even in pads, he looks the part.
Yeah, he does. He's a big dude, and he and Jalen Harris, combined, they look the part for sure. And Brady Russell obviously has been pretty good at the tight end spot. It was good to see Jared Poplawski out there finally. Yeah. He's been so injury prone throughout his career. I don't know how much to expect out of him, but it's good to see him out there at least. But I think they've got the bodies. I think they got the ability at tight end to be productive there.
Media Day, we had a nice meatloaf lunch. It was delicious. This event is not really for us. We're around every day, so a lot of the questions asked are from radio and TV people that we've heard the answer to these questions 100 times, but we also get a chance to kind of circulate, talk to some players. I know you had a long conversation with Tyson Summers. What did you take away from that conversation?
Well, I think he shares a lot of the same view that we do. That there's not a whole lot of depth there as far as experience. We all look at it, and it's easy for us to look at it and say, well, boy, there's no depth there because these guys haven't played, and so you don't automatically think they're going to be good, but he doesn't. He looks at it and says, "There's just not experience there," and there's really only a few guys that have played. He likes a lot of guys on this defense, but it may take some time a little bit. But he loves some of the talent at cornerback, loves some of the talent at defensive line, at safety. He actually talked a lot about Darian Rakestraw, who we heard about in the spring a little bit. He said he knows the defense just about better than anybody, and he's worked really hard. And so I think at safety, I kind of look at like a Mark Perry, Mikhail Onu, Aaron Maddox, and I kind of look at those as the top three, but we can't write off Darian Rakestraw, and he was running with the ones a lot today, so he mentioned him quite a bit. So, but certainly there is concern with depth there and just a lack of experience.
And Tyson Summers is a no excuses guy, falling in line with Mel Tucker's approach here. I asked a bunch of players a bunch of random questions for some features I'm running. One of the questions I asked them, what's the biggest difference you've noticed with this staff this year? And it was a common theme of just professionalism, expectations, everything has just been raised, intensity. There was no hesitation from any of those guys. I know it's preseason, we're always going to be optimistic, but there is genuinely a difference within this program this preseason. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that it's hard to say all these things without sounding like you're knocking the old staff. I think the old staff had some good qualities as well, but certainly the players are buying into what's going on here. I asked Nate Lamb before he left, what's your impression of Coach Summers, and he said, I love him. Just his intensity and just what he demands and no excuses. So these guys are buying in. It's not just Tucker. Obviously, he's the face, and people are loving Tucker. But I mean, you talk to players, they like their position coaches. There's high praise for Kapilovich. There's high praise for Ross Ells, and who was obviously here before. But I think the players like this staff, and that's huge.
All right, we're 3 practices in. They're going to take Sunday off, practice on Monday, and then Tuesday, first practice in full pads. Are you hanging in there?
I'm hanging in there. 3 days, and we got plenty of time. They got. 4 weeks from today, we're going to be talking about the aftermath of the first game.
That'll be great.
That's crazy.
All right, we'll be back on Monday with more analysis.